Good morning, everyone. It's Saturday, not my normal day to be coming with you, but we don't leave for a few hours, and so I thought, let's get to Daniel chapter 3 this morning. Good morning, Mahesh, Savannah, good morning. Glad you're joining us. This is Daniel chapter 3. What a great morning this is going to be. Hope, Mahesh, you and Robert are doing well. Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Danielle. Good morning, Kim. Good morning, Lacey. Good morning, Kathy. Good morning, Terry. Glad you're all coming in very quickly this morning. That blesses me. Good morning, Colby. I know it's Saturday, and I wouldn't normally, but I had a few moments before we left, and I thought, Savannah, I'm glad you joined us. Nina, I'm glad you're here. Savannah is going to be coming to a school of worship, and all you who've been to school of worship should encourage her. What it's going to be like for her. Good morning, Crystal. Good morning, Laura Kokenauer. Good morning, everyone coming in this morning. Laura, I love what you did with my new song that you and I are writing and working on. Good morning, Madeline. I was just looking at your post this morning and thinking about how long I've known you. And it's been over 10 years, I think, hasn't it? Good morning, everyone who's coming in. Good morning, Crystal. Good morning, Stacy. I hope your dad's doing well. And you're doing well, and I know we have several who have been fighting the COVID-19, and I believe with all of my heart that you're all doing well. Good morning, Tiffany Coleman. Glad everyone's coming in this morning. Good morning, Jesse from Grand Blanc. Nice to see you live. Everyone is good. I pray and I believe. This is such a great chapter. I just couldn't wait until Monday. Colby says, let's just say I would rather be at School of Worship than a trip to Hawaii. It's that good. Thank you, Colby. Well, I agree, because it's a trip right into the throne room of God, isn't it? And we get to stay in the presence of God without being interrupted and constantly jumping in and out. So it's a great time. Now, let's talk about Daniel chapter 3 today, because wow, what an exciting chapter. One that most of us would say, I know this chapter. And that's true. That's true. We do know it. We know the crux of it. We know the dimension of the story that comes from it. Stacy's given us a good report that her doing a miracle. Yes, Dad is doing a miracle is going on with her dad. Danielle, this cough has got to go in Jesus' name, and everyone else that has this virus, it cannot stay. Amen. Good morning, Sarah. Thanks for joining us. Now, we get into chapter 3, and I want to pose some questions to you before we get too deep into just the reading of the scriptures. And the reason I want to do this, good morning, Mackenzie, is I want you to think about some things. For instance, in chapter 2 at the very end now, Daniel has interpreted the king's dream, and the prophetic interpretation of the dream is there are 4 kingdoms. His own is the gold one, which would be Babylon. Persia would be the silver one. Greece would be the bronze one. That would be the belly and the thighs. The silver one would be the chest and the arms. Rome would be the iron legs. And then the feet of iron and clay, describing today's unstable global community. And what we wait for is that stone from heaven that comes and it crushes the whole thing. And in the process of doing it, that stone from heaven would of course be upon this church, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. So when he's talking about this big massive rock coming from heaven, this massive stone coming from heaven, he's talking about Jesus. Jesus will come, and all these natural demonic type kingdoms will be destroyed. And then this stone comes from heaven, and notice that the stone strikes the feet, and the feet are where these 10 toes are. And in striking the feet, it collapses the entire statue. Now think about the statue because of what was about to happen in chapter 3. And then I want you to think about the fact that to become this mountain that fills the earth, that's what it's talking about, this mountain that fills the earth. I want you to realize that God is talking about there's the mountain of worship, and that's the one that's going to crush and bring down the Antichrist spirit in the last days. When it gets to the 10 toes, it's not talking about history now, it's talking about future. And those 10 toes represent, good morning, Olive, thanks for joining us. And if I'm going too deep, we're going to get right back into the story of chapter 3. But I want you to understand, many of you are looking for more. You're looking for the depth. And so I'm trying to give you the depth before we go back into a story that you're very familiar with. These 10 toes are representative of the time on the earth when the Antichrist sets up his kingdom, his power. And good morning, Rhonda. And during this time, excuse me, when the 10 toes are established as the 10 kingdoms, according to Revelation and other places we'll get to in Daniel, these 10 toes represent 10 kingdoms of the Antichrist. They may be world powers, which is what we've always thought in the past. But young Harry and I, and you know he's a deep thinker, we're talking about this last night, and he says, what if these 10 kingdoms of the Antichrist, what if these last days set up of the 10 toes, the 10 kingdoms during the tribulation, what if they are mountains of influence? What if they are things like finances / money, medicine, and what's going on with the medical community, politics, economics, power, military, worship, media, religion, civil rights? What if these are the 10 toes? What if these are the culture of this age? They very well could be. So we don't know yet because nothing has been revealed about it, but it's something to consider because we are much more worshiping now these type of cultural things than we are worshiping any humanity anymore. And that's why the Antichrist will be able to come in without human affection. I mean, the Antichrist could be an AI. It could be artificial intelligence even. Now, I know I'm way out there. I'm just throwing out some things to get your brain out of the box. For when you think in the revelation of God, you have to get out of the box of the religion you've been taught and learn how to think with the Spirit of God spurring your thought life. Am I going too fast? Am I saying too much? Please let me know. If I'm way too far out there for you, just give me some of your comments. Now, with this in mind, I want you to think about the fact that in this story, here's what I want you to understand. Daniel has just been promoted to be working inside the kingdom. The Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the 3 Hebrew boys, have been promoted from chapter 2. We see their promotion happens. Daniel petitioned the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate with the king. So we're talking about 2 different places of influence, but both have great power involved. Now, let's get into chapter 3. But I'm going to ask you a question. In chapter 3, think about this. Where's Daniel? Where's Daniel in this whole chapter? I'd like for you to tell me what you think when we're finished. Where's Daniel? Now, I want to make a point about something. Nebuchadnezzar was very moved about Daniel's God, and the fact that Daniel's God could not only tell him the interpretation, but he could tell him the dream. And Nebuchadnezzar was very moved. But I want you to remember that response to God does not constitute conversion. The king responded to God, but he was not converted. And we have many people in our society that are responding to God, but they're not being converted. Good morning, Jean. Good morning, Damsel Arise. I like that. That's cute. So all of you are with me. I'm not saying anything that makes anybody get off. Good, good, good. So think about, have you just responded to God, or have you truly been converted? Because the difference is your consistency. Here, this king, he's like the biggest schizophrenic king there is. He's over here one minute, he's over here another, he's over here another, and he's got a lot of anger. He has a lot of daddy issues because he's got a lot of anger going on in his life. We have the king's golden image, chapter 3. Nebuchadnezzar the king made a gold-plated image whose height, including the pedestal, was 60 cubits, which means 90 feet, and its width 60 cubits, which means 9 feet. So it's 9 feet deep and 90 feet tall. Now think about what happened in chapter 2 and the dream. Think about what he saw in the dream. And now it's as if he's trying to build it. But he's building it of his own image, and it's all gold, which, remember, he represented the gold part of the image. So he's made this massive 90-foot tall, 9 feet deep sculpture of himself, statue of himself, and he's plating it with gold. And he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Now, here's part of it. Where was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? They were appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon. So that's part of the reason why they are the main part of this story. They're the main characters in this part of the story. Because the image, the 90-foot tall, 9 feet deep image, was set up on the plain of where they are appointed to maintain power. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent word to assemble the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and lawgivers, and lawyers, and all the chief officials of the province to come to the dedication. Good morning, Sheila. Thanks for joining us. Damsel arise, what is your name? And I'll call you by your first name and not by damsel arise. Either way, I like that. Province is to come to the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Good morning, Michelle Alvarez. We are praying for continued restoration for you. Then the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and the lawyers, and all the chief officials, Talisha. Thank you for joining us. Good morning. Of the provinces gathered together for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before it. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, "You are commanded, O peoples, nations, and speakers of every language, that at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, 4-stringed harp, the dulcimer, the bagpipe, and all kinds of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up." So he's got this big old image in front of him. Good morning. Good morning, Patty. Good morning, Yari. Good morning, Jan, I believe it is. Thanks, all of you, for joining me. Now, listen, this is what happens. There's a 90-foot gold statue of King Nebuchadnezzar. It's 9 feet deep in width. It's 90 feet tall, and there's a big, huge band. And so everybody's been joined before this thing, and they're going to dedicate this big old statue. Now, the band is playing. The herald is saying what needs to be said. This is your command. When you hear the music, bow down and worship. Whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be thrown in the midst of a furnace of blazing fire. Wow, that's just amazing that he would even think, okay, there are going to be people that won't worship my image, so let's set up a big, huge fire. Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Lucy. Let's set up this big, huge fire, because some are not going to bow, and those who won't bow, they're going to be thrown in. I can imagine, like you, Colby. I bet it was quite the deal in Babylon. When you don't have TV and you don't have the internet and you don't have anything to entertain you, this is the big deal. And they probably watched this thing being built for a long time. You know, they didn't just throw this up in a couple of days. So when the people heard the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, dulcimer, bagpipe, and all kinds of music, all the peoples, nations, and speakers of every language fell down and worshiped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. We have to be very careful that we don't get caught up just like these people did and in the culture, worshiping the culture, because that's what this really represents. It represents that we must be careful not to get all caught up and worship the culture. Verse 8, worship of the image refused. At that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and brought malicious accusations against the Jews. Now, wait a minute. The Chaldeans, these are the ones that did not lose their lives in the last chapter, because Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, went in prayer before the Lord, and Daniel went to sleep and got the dream that the king did not have. He went and presented it, and these Chaldeans, these magicians, all of these people, they were going to be killed. But Daniel, along with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who were also in prayer with him, they saved their lives. But just because you save someone's life, it doesn't mean they won't turn on you. Sometimes the very fact that you did save their life, the very fact that you did what they were not capable of doing, makes them so jealous of you that this is what happens. At that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and brought malicious accusations against the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, now listen to who they brought the accusations against. O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the dulcimer, the bagpipe, and all kinds of music is to fall down and worship the golden image. Whoever does not fall down and worship shall be thrown into the midst of the blazing fire. I'm just going to count how many instruments we have here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus all kinds of music. I just find that interesting that every time they said it, they said 7 instruments, which I believe meant the completion of all the instruments that were available at that time, and all kinds of music. So, wow, we're not just talking about one kind of music here. We're talking about all kinds of music, and here in the Amplified it says that every time. So, they shall be thrown in the midst of the burning fire furnace, which obviously took a while to build that too. Hi, Cheryl. Thanks for joining us. John 16:20. Tell me again your first name. That's Priscilla, right? Is that right? There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the administration of the province of Babylon, namely Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you have set up. Now, this is the very people that saved their life. Wow. This is the very people that saved their life. And yet, they cannot wait to go tell the king on them, to get them thrown into the fiery furnace. Do not be so shocked when people that you think love you, people that you think should be grateful to you, thankful to you, don't be so shocked if those very people turn on you, tattle on you, bring malicious gossip against you. It happened here, it'll happen to you. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed, namely Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they are not worshiping the golden image. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in a furious rage, gave a command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and these men were brought before the king. Again, let me ask you, where is Daniel? Where is Daniel in all of this? Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image which I have set up? Now I have to just stop here and point out, Nebuchadnezzar must have been about nutty, crazy, certainly schizophrenic, maybe bipolar, I don't know, but he was over here one day and over here the next. I mean, just few verses earlier, he was saying, anybody that doesn't worship the God of these Hebrew boys, I'll cut into pieces. And then out of the next thing out of his mouth, he's saying, oh, I'm going to make a God of myself, and you're going to have to worship me. I'm sure the people were as confused as we are today. What is right? Should we do this? Should we do that? I mean, the governors are saying one thing, the president is saying another, the local sheriffs are saying another. What are we supposed to be doing? It is so confusing. One day it's this, the next day it's this. I mean, that's kind of like the culture we're living in right now. The only difference is we are not threatened with death. Well, I guess we sort of are. Because if you don't do this, you're surely going to die, is the pronunciation over all of us. We just have to know who our God is and stand our ground and know what God is saying to us. And if you cannot hear his voice, you're in a heap of trouble. You're in a heap of trouble because you've got to know what God is saying to you. In your circumstance, in your situation, what does God want you to do right now? So you need to hear his voice. Okay, so is it true? The king asked. Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound, he's giving him another chance. When you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, again, the whole statement, to fall down and worship the image which I have made, very good. But if you do not worship, you shall be thrown at once into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. And what God is there who can rescue you out of my hands? He has completely forgotten the God who gave him the dream. And that's how quickly we forget our God. God does a miracle for you, and by the next day you forgot to give him any glory for it. You're just as worried and fretful and panicked as you ever were. You're not trusting in God. You're trusting in fear. You're trusting in information. You're trusting in looking for the tree of knowledge to give you some kind of information that'll save your life. Only the one true God could give you the information you're looking for, as we are living in this time when everything is changing. Everything is changing daily. Good morning, Mona. Thanks for joining me. Good morning, Marlo. Thanks for joining me. Lacey, I'm so glad you're with us. Yes, make your comments. It helps everyone to read these. Now, don't you notice something very important here? This king is wanting the worship. He is a type of Antichrist. He is a type of fallen Lucifer and Satan. What did Satan want? He wanted the worship. He wanted the attention. He wanted to be like God. And so here we have Nebuchadnezzar, who is simply fallen into the hands and being played, Romans 6:13, as an instrument of wickedness, saying, worship me. Good morning, Pastor Laura. Glad you're joining us. So here we have this time and this season when, once again, the Antichrist spirit on Nebuchadnezzar is simply trying to get the worship. I mean, it wasn't enough during this season that they said, oh, churches can't meet. But then when they had to legally say, okay, you can meet and it can only be this amount of people and blah, 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 they said, but you can't sing. That's what California said. You can't sing. Why? Worship. Because to them, worship represents singing. They don't realize it. Obviously, they haven't been to school of worship. That worship is about heart. And it's every act of everything that we do is worship unto Him. Every way you act, every way you talk, every way you look. Of course, we use music for worship, but we use everything. His word, our prayer time, intercession on the wall of God, standing on the wall. All of it is worship. As we lift our hands and our voices and we are His image to the world around us, that's worship. And all Satan wants is your worship. Just like Nebuchadnezzar, who had a response to God, but no conversion. We are surrounded by people who call themselves Christians, who have had a response to God, but no conversion. Their heart is not changed, and that's why it feels so confusing. And that's why the church cannot come into agreement, because much of the church is made up of such ungodliness and unrighteous people that, of course, they're not going to agree with righteousness, with the remnant of holiness and the remnant of godliness. So we have to get the church saved. We have to get those who say they are Christians but are not. We have to get them converted, not just responding to God, but have a true conversion. Now, I didn't mean to get off there, but I believe this is tying to this story so strongly. So he said, now if you're ready, when all these instruments play and you bow down, that'll be very good. But if you don't, you'll be thrown in at once into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. Now I'm on verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to answer you on this point. In other words, I think you know the answer before we ever open our mouths. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to rescue us, to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire, and He will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if He does not, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods of worship or worship the golden image that you have set up. Now, we could spend a year right here. What they said was what most Christians will say, but they don't do. They said, number one, our God is able to deliver us, and He will deliver us. But even if He doesn't, even if we die, we will not worship anyone but Him. We will not worship a golden image. We will not worship your little cheese. We will not worship this culture. We will not be tainted with the environment that we are living in. We will not be moved. And if we die, we die. As Esther said, if I perish, I perish. But I will obey what I am called to do, and I will put my trust always in God. Our daughter Gabrielle goes to heaven, and people say, well, what do you believe now? I believe exactly what I believed beforehand, that our God is a great God. He's a healing Jesus. He's a delivering Jesus. He's a restoring Jesus. He's everything he says he is. Just because you don't get everything you pray for does not mean that God fell off the throne. He is not a Coke machine. It's not you put in your quarter and you hold out your hand. You push your button, I want this from you, God. And you put out your hand to receive. Our God is our God, regardless of what he gives you. Isn't it time that we stop looking for what's in his hand and we get in his face and we stay in his face until he comes? Our lives can be changed in his face. He can give us from his hand all day long for the rest of our lives. And we can have a response to God, but no conversion. God is calling us to stop just responding and be converted. Be changed forever. We are not looking for what's in his hand. And you've got to get your eyes off his hand. You've got to get your eyes on his face. His presence must be with you. How will you know which way to go? How will you know what to do? Unless you have his presence with you. And you will not have his presence with you seeking his hand and what he can do for you. You must seek his face and who he is so you can know who you are. And there is no two ways about it. There is only one way, and this is it. Daniel's friends protected. Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and his facial expression changed toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then he gave a command that the furnace was to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. And of course, that means it turns into a God fire because it's 7 times hotter. It is finished a fire. It is not just a devouring fire now. It is a purifying fire. It is so hot that purification comes forth. He commanded certain strong men in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and to throw them into the furnace of blazing fire. Then these 3 men were tied up in their trousers, their coats, their turbans, and their other clothes, and were thrown into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. Because the king's command was urgent and the furnace was extremely hot, the flame of the fire killed the men who carried up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, I want to stop for a moment and let's talk about this. This fire was so hot, it was a purifying fire. But these men were not in a position to be purified that threw them in. So they got close to the purifying fire, and instead of being purified, it devoured them. And that's what will happen with people who want to be close to God for what they can get from God instead of wanting to be close to God for who he is. So you have to be careful about your heart and how you approach God and why you approach God. Secondly, here we have these 3 boys, these 3 men who said, we will not bow. But when it came time to go into the fire, look what they had to do. They tied them up. Why? Because no one, no matter how confessing we are to say we'll go into the fire, no one willingly just walks into the fire. They still had to tie them up. They still had to throw them in. And that's me, that's you, that's everybody. We willingly will say we will go into the fire, but when it's time to go into the fire, we have to be tied up and thrown in because all of us resist the fire. All of us resist purification. All of us resist being changed because we hold on to our old nature. But thank the Lord, he ties us up with the Holy Ghost and he sends us into the fire knowing full well that as the silversmith, he's looking right at us. And until he sees his reflection in us, he doesn't pull us out of the fire. And sometimes he puts us in and out because he doesn't want to devour us. He knows we can only take so much, but he keeps putting us back into the fire until we come out looking like him. The whole purpose of the fire is so we come out looking like him. Hello. It was not to devour you or to hurt you or to bring judgment on you. The whole purpose of the fire is to make you look like him. And we know that happened because what happens when they go into the fire? The 3 men were devoured, but the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they fell into the midst of the burning blaze, still tied up. Notice that it says they were still tied up. When they got in the fire, they were all bound up. They were all tied up. And I'm telling you, Sometimes, most of the time, when God puts us in the fire, we're all tied up. We're all bound up over something that happened to us, over our past, over something the woulda, shoulda, couldas of life. We're all bound up and got all this crap from our past trying to predict our future. And here we're thrown into the fire just like these boys were thrown into the fire, and they were all bound up when they went in there, and they needed to be delivered. And many times people who are Christians need to be delivered. They need to be delivered from what has them bound. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king, he looked, and he was astounded, and he jumped up and said to his counselors, "Did we not throw 3 men who were tied up in the midst of the fire?" They replied to the king, "Certainly, O king." He answered, "Look, I see 4 men untied, walking around in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like the son of a god." Now here we go. He has no eyes to see who God really is. Obviously, he missed it every time. He responds to God, but he still has no conversion, so he can't see. He cannot see truth. He can only see what's in the natural. And in the natural, he sees Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now they are delivered. Now what had them bound is burned off of them. That's what the fire is worth. It will burn off what binds you. It will burn off what you need deliverance from, but it won't burn you. It will only purify you and get you ready and in position. Now, this 4th man, he sees, there's somebody else in there with them, and that's why you cannot resist the fire of God, because he will not burn you up. He simply becomes the fire that purifies you. He simply surrounds you with the backfire of his presence. He puts his fire around you, and you are purified but not harmed. Now, everything goes from this point. Then Nebuchadnezzar approached the door of the blazing furnace and said, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out of there, come here." Now, I think that's interesting. Why didn't he call for the 4th man he saw? Why didn't he call for the 4th man to come out? I think that is so interesting. I think he knew another response to God. He knew it was God, but he was afraid to even speak to the God that he was seeing. But notice that in the midst of the fire, the image the king saw was God. And in the midst of your fire, if you will allow God to burn up the stuff that binds you, when people look into the fire, not when you come out, but when you're in it, when you're in the fire, people can see God. They can see God right inside of you. And it's time that we recognize the fire of God is for us, not against us. The fire of God brings us to the place we need to be in. Now here, he calls them all out. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the midst of the fire. Why didn't God come out? Because God was the fire. God was the fire. God became the fire. So the fire didn't walk out. The fire stayed. Isn't that amazing? The satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselor gathered around them and saw that in regard to these men, the fire had no effect on their bodies. Their hair was not singed. Their clothes were not scorched or damaged. Even the smell of smoke. Now listen, everything that bound them was burned off of them, but it burned right up to their clothes and did not burn their covering. It did not burn their clothes. It did not even scorch their clothes. They didn't even smell like smoke in their clothes. But everything that had bound them around their clothes was burned off. Their hair was not singed. Their clothes were not scorched or damaged. Even the smell of smoke was not on them. Nebuchadnezzar, again, he responded and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants who believed in, trusted in, and relied on him." That's amplified. It's time we believe in God, we trust in God, and we rely on God. Isn't it time that we stop just playing, that we stop just responding, and we get into the fire of God and let him purify us? Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants who believed in, trusted in, and relied on him. They violated the king's command and surrendered their bodies rather than serve or worship any god except their own. Therefore, I make a decree. Here the king is. Now see, this is what will happen when God's people will stand up. We don't have to have a president or a vice president or a cabinet or senators who are necessarily saved, but they are in charge of the land. But it is up to God's people to show them that our God is the only true God. And what's wrong in our nation is that God's people are not getting the miracles that they need to be getting. They're not walking in the fire. They will refuse to be who God created us to be. And until we are the church and the world can see that we are the church, these leaders are not going to make decisions that are based upon that. The power and the fire and the presence and the purifying place of righteousness and holiness in our society. Therefore, I make a decree. This is the king, Nebuchadnezzar, who's responding to God but not converted. I make a decree that any people, nation, or language that speaks anything offensive against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut into pieces, and their houses be made a heap of rubbish, for there is no God who is able to save in this way. Then the king caused Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to prosper in the province of Babylon. Once again, they got another promotion for standing in the right place. It is time that we stand in the right place. It is time that we stop being afraid of the fire. It is time that we quit acting like we're not the church. And it's time that we act like the church. It's time that we do what it needs to happen to make a difference in our society, in our nation, in our world. I don't know about you, but I'm ready for change. I'm ready for change. So let's be the church. Let's not resist the fire of God. Let's not resist the purification. Thanks for joining me on this Saturday morning. I won't be with you tomorrow on Sunday because we will be preaching in Yuma, Arizona at Champion Church with Pastors Stephen and Lucinda Bloomfield. We'll be there all 3 services in the morning. Hopefully, if you're in the area, you could join us. But I'll be back with you Monday morning, and we will hit chapter 4 of Daniel. You can go back and watch this on our YouTube channel. And if you didn't catch prayer on Thursday night that was live, or our son Harry, Dr. Harry, on angels, you will really enjoy both of those interviews that we did Thursday night. So stay with me on Daniel. Go back and watch chapters 1, 2, and 3. Look for the revelation. Take notes. Run the references. If you haven't gotten your Genesis Passion Translation ordered from our ministry, I have 2 new shipments coming in. So if you've ordered already and haven't received it, they'll all be shipped out on Monday. And also, if you've not ordered it and you want your Passion Translation Genesis, which is what we will do when we finish Daniel, we're going to dive into Genesis and see how far we can get with that. So all is well. Okay, yes. Where was Daniel? You want me to answer that question, Nina? Let me tell you what the commentary says. There is several reasons for the exclusion of Daniel have been proposed. In other words, nobody knows. Perhaps he was away from the capital on official business. Perhaps his lofty position exempt him from such demonstrations. Or perhaps his enemies were simply afraid to accuse him. I think that might be the case. I think they were afraid to bring accusation against Daniel because of what had happened. And now they'll be afraid to bring accusation against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And what does that tell us? That tells us that each one of us are going to have to stand for ourselves. There is a corporate anointing that'll protect you so far. But then there is a personal reliance on the Lord that you must walk in yourself. We all must walk in ourselves. And each one of us has to go through our own individual fires until we know how to stand in his presence, unashamed and already crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who lives, but Christ who lives in me. And that's how you fulfill Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Let us make mankind in our image. How can you become his image? Don't resist the fire. Don't resist the trouble you have to go through to become the image that people can see. Hope you enjoyed that. Love you all. I'll see you Monday with chapter 4.